He told me, he told Puff. He never mentioned a damn thing to Big. As his label mate, he had an obligation. As a fellow New Yorker, he had an obligation to tell Big. And I don't want to hear about I don't want to snitch, I don't want to rat, I ain't got nothing to do with that.
This ain't just some petty rumor. It's the kind of claim that can rewrite how we see one of the darkest nights in music. Deal insists Biggie's fate wasn't locked in by some faceless shooter in a black Impala alone, but by choices, silence, and maybe even ambition from people standing closest to him.
Because Mase want to laugh and lie about the situation. Let's get into it, bro. I want to get into this. I want to tell you that Mase had a duty and an obligation.
And here's the kicker. Deal swears this chain of events didn't start in the chaos of bullets flying, but way earlier, under the bright lights of a celebrity basketball game. Mase and Stevie J were courtside, mingling with stars, when they allegedly caught wind of something deadly serious.
Mase had a duty as a label mate to tell Chris, these dudes want you dead.
According to Deal, the whispers weren't whispers at all. They were straight-up declarations. Certain people in the crowd wanted Diddy gone and Biggie gone right alongside him. No riddles, no hidden threats, just raw talk that should have sent shockwaves.
I heard some things and I saw some things that was disturbing to me. That somebody sent me the video, I looked at it, and it was Cam and Mase, and here they go laughing again about the security the night Big lost his life, which was disturbing to me, bro.
In Deal's version, Mase did pass the warning up to Diddy, but not to Biggie. Not a single word. That decision or that silence is where the wound cuts deepest. Because to Deal, Mase didn't just fumble as a friend, he failed as a soldier in the same crew, the same family, the same empire.
Mase came back from that game. He let me know, and he let Puff know that he was good. They wanted Puff and Big dead.
Deal says this wasn't some slip-up or blind spot. It was intentional, like Mase picked a side without saying it out loud. And here's where it gets real dirty. Biggie was the crown jewel of bad boy. Ambition is a dirty motive, but in the ruthless world of 90s hip-hop, it might have been enough to keep a man's mouth shut, even as danger was closing in. Gene Deal hints that silence wasn't just weakness, it was strategy. And his version of events cuts even deeper when you line it up against what came after.
Gene, here go Miss Wallace.
Hey, Miss Wallace, Gene Deal.
Oh, hi, Gene. How are you?
All right, man. You know I ain't seen you since I came to your house and had that conversation with you. How you been? You all right?
I've been okay. I've been watching you on Facebook.
See, in old interviews, Mase tried to flip the script, claiming he was stuck in a Los Angeles hotel room that night, trapped while 70 Bloods were hunting down bad boy artists. He even said Deal was the one who rescued him, but Deal says that's all smoke and mirrors. According to him, Mase wasn't locked up with R&B star Brandy at all, because Brandy herself was calling him, begging him to come through.
I knew that somebody was going to die that night. Somebody was going to get shot.
Deal says the timelines don't match, the calls don't match, nothing in Mase's story lines up with the truth of that chaotic night. And then comes the part that stings the most, the disrespect. Mase once laughed it up on a podcast, joking about how Biggie's security handled that chaos. But for Deal, that ain't comedy, it's betrayal. To him, that laughter is like watching someone dance on the memory of a night soaked in blood and grief. He says this isn't harmless chatter. It's someone trying to rewrite history to make themselves look untouchable.
Nah, because, when last time I saw him, his eyes were still open. He was just looking up, just looking like.
Deal swears he looked Biggie in the eye before the Vibe party and said straight up, "One of y'all ain't coming back tonight if you go." That warning was heavy, maybe ignored, but at least it was spoken. And that's where the dagger twists, because in his eyes, Mase gave Biggie nothing. No warning, no loyalty, just silence.
Believe it or not,
My son was my best friend. I miss him a lot.
The motive Gene Deal puts on the table hangs heavy, like smoke you can't breathe through. If the world's biggest rapper, the crown jewel of Bad Boy, suddenly vanished, who stood next in line? Was that the lane Mase had his eyes on? Deal sure frames it that way, and he doesn't stop there. He twists the blade by reminding everyone that the prize Mase might have wanted never even touched his hands, because Diddy grabbed that top spot for himself.
But my whole thing is, my way of thinking is why I have Biggie even in LA. After Tupac, you had him in Parks.
It's a tragedy dripping with futility, something out of a Shakespeare play, only this one's carved out of real blood, real headlines, and real loss. And then comes the detail that feels almost too eerie to brush off. Word in the industry is that Biggie's shadow never really left Mase. Nightmares that won't fade, sightings and dreams, hearing the voice of the man whose last hours he lived through, but who, according to Deal, he failed to protect.
Because she was, I think, understanding clearly what had happened. And I think she was starting to see that other people were responsible than who she previously had believed.
This ain't no campfire ghost tale. These are the type of dreams that jolt you out of sleep, heart racing, sweating, wondering if you're being watched, or worse, judged. It's the kind of legend that feeds itself, the kind of torment that makes you question if guilt can actually stretch across decades, clawing at your peace until it finally breaks you.
But I used to be hurt because I knew the people that she had around her was Puff Boys. So we could never connect like that. So only time I tried to connect with Miss Wallace is when she needed me, and she used Perry Sanders to call me.
And Deal's words don't just hit one nerve, they drag us to an even darker question. The real issue isn't only whether Mase knew something that night, it's why he kept quiet. And if he stayed silent back then, what else might he still be holding back today? But here's where it gets colder. The silence ain't the only shadow in this story. Because once you widen the lens, the whispers start dragging in bigger names, darker forces. And you can't forget this. LAPD's corruption scandals in the late 90s weren't just background noise. They were rot at the core of the system, touching gang units, big money cases, even the very security circles that wrapped around hip-hop's brightest stars.
My whole thing is, Big got, because he wasn't supposed to be in LA. That's just my opinion.
But it was probably some gang shit, right?
The biggest names were circling, ex-cops tied to Suge Knight's orbit, whispers of payoffs, shady visits with inmates, even talk of arranging hits. This wasn't some clean-cut world of good guys and bad guys. It was a battlefield where motives blurred and power was everything. And into that picture, some say, walked Mase. Not as the mastermind, not even as a willing accomplice, but as just another piece on the chessboard. Deal and others suggest Mase may have been pressed into silence by men who didn't just threaten. They proved they could back those threats with real action. If that's the case, then his silence wasn't about ambition. It was about survival. A price paid not in money, but in somebody else's life. And insiders have long hinted that the pressure on bad boy artists back then was relentless, coming from both sides of the East Coast versus West Coast war. Picture it. You're told in no uncertain terms that speaking out could earn you the same fate as the man you might have saved. That kind of fear doesn't just scare you, it strangles you. The message was simple. Fall in line, stay quiet, and maybe you make it home alive. That's the world Deal describes, where gang allegiances and police badges blurred into one deadly network, and nobody was truly safe. Now, whether Mase knowingly stepped into that storm or just got sucked under by the undertow, that's the part no one can prove. But in a city where cops drove the same model car as Biggie's shooter, the line between official business and street business was razor thin. And here's the part people forget. Long before that deadly night in LA, the whispers had already started. Insiders talked about a quiet tension brewing between Biggie and Mase. Not open beef, but subtle power plays in the mid-90s rap game. Biggie was the lyrical king of the East, no question, but his personal taste sometimes clashed with the label's calculated moves. Those close to the circle still remember how Biggie openly pushed another Harlem voice, Cam'ron. He saw Cam as the real heir to Harlem's raw street energy, the one ready to carry the torch. And Biggie didn't exactly keep that opinion to himself. In a camp as cutthroat as Bad Boy, where every position meant money and power, that kind of preference didn't go unnoticed. That undercurrent mattered, because at Bad Boy, a cosign wasn't just a compliment, it was currency. One nod from Biggie could make or break a career. And for Mase, that stamp of approval meant everything. So when the whispers spread that Biggie had his eyes on Cameron instead, it wasn't just a professional slight, it was a dark cloud hanging over Mase's rise. In the 90s, every verse, every guest spot, every freestyle was an audition for the throne. And if the king wasn't picking you, that could sting like betrayal. Think about it. When you believe the boss's chosen one is someone else, that's enough to twist brotherhood into quiet calculation. And when that someone else isn't even in the room, that tension festers, turning inward, eating away at you. The wild part is, on the surface, Mase and Biggie were still moving together, sharing tracks, posing in photos, keeping the image clean. But underneath, there was always the unspoken question: who was really Harlem's flag bearer? Biggie's endorsement of Cameron wasn't something Mase could just brush off. It likely haunted him. Every studio session, every freestyle, every radio drop, he had to prove he was the guy. Back then, hip-hop wasn't just about sales. It was about dominance, about being the first name people shouted when they repped their city. Losing that crown, even in theory, could feel like losing the whole war. And this is where Gene Deal's accusations cut deeper. If Mase was already feeling overshadowed, then the thought of Biggie's seat suddenly opening up might have hit him differently than anyone else in that circle. Was his silence on the night of the shooting just fear, or was it ambition creeping through? That flips the whole story from a matter of security to a matter of hunger. And let's be real, ambition has destroyed more partnerships in this game than bullets ever did. Even the public could catch glimpses if they knew where to look. Fans who really dig into old interviews and magazine spreads from back then swear they could spot the tension. Moments where Biggie's praise tilted towards somebody else, while Mase's body language in group shots looked more guarded than genuine smiles. And in the rap industry, perception ain't just surface, it's survival. When the world starts believing somebody else is the chosen one, every move becomes a performance. One eye smiling for the camera, the other locked on the throne. The backdrop was Bad Boy in overdrive. After the explosion of Biggie's debut, the label was stacking artists, juggling egos, and maneuvering through the deadly East versus West war. In that storm, even the smallest rivalries got magnified. And for every milestone Biggie hit, every bag Biggie secured, wasn't just a win for the team, it was a reminder of the space between them. A gap so wide, it would take nothing short of fate or tragedy to close. So when you lay that history over March 1997, the picture sharpens into something darker. Mase's silence the night of the shooting doesn't sit alone. It sits inside a backdrop of bruised pride, ambition, and favoritism already brewing. Did that mix play into his choices that night? Nobody can say for sure. But the possibility adds another jagged piece to the puzzle. One that stretches the story beyond a single night and into years of low-key rivalry waiting for the right moment to explode. And here's the truth: coercion and complicity leave different scars. And it's those scars that give away the rest of the story. Because since that night, Mase has carried himself like a man trying to keep the past locked tight under control. But the cracks keep slipping through. His story bends and shifts. Sometimes he leans heavy on certain memories, like the 70 Bloods outside his hotel or feeling abandoned in LA. Other pieces, they just fade away from the timeline like they never happened at all. It's a pattern we've seen before with public figures carrying secrets they'll never fully unpack. Say just enough to stay relevant in the conversation, but never enough to give away the piece that really matters. And with Mase, that haunting angle refuses to fade. On podcasts, he'll laugh about the old days, but the moment Biggie's name comes up, the tone shifts. He'll brush off grudges with a smile 1 minute, then throw sly shots at anyone daring to question his role the next. Yet those who were close to the chaos swear he ain't slept right in decades. If the mind replays what the lips never confess, maybe those dreams people whisper about are his real confession. Nightmares of the man he didn't warn, the man whose spot on the label stood just ahead of his own. That's the kind of shadow no rebranding tour, no nostalgic reunion can erase. Guilt ain't always loud. It creeps, it stalks, and it lingers until you break. And when you zoom out, Mase's piece of the puzzle looks less like an isolated slip and more like a fragment in a giant, shadowy conspiracy. Biggie's murder is still unsolved, but the parallels with Tupac's are too sharp to ignore. Two rap giants taken down in calculated ambushes, both in the middle of high-profile events. Two investigations that suddenly lost momentum right when the trail burned hottest. Add in whispers of prison intermediaries moving orders, dirty figures with badges moving in silence, and the eerie fact that some of those same names were circling bad boy artists in that era. And you're staring at something way bigger than one man's silence. So the question that won't go away is this: If Mase really did hold back that threat against Biggie, why? Was he keeping quiet for himself, following orders from above, or protecting his own life because speaking up would have made him the next target? The way these stories twist and timelines clash, we may never hear the full truth from Mase himself. But if his silence really ties into law enforcement dirt, Suga Knight's orbit, and the West Coast rivalries of the 90s, then this wasn't just artist drama, it was a full-blown operation. And that operation didn't stop at the Peterson Automotive Museum. That's the part that makes it terrifying. Because if even half of what Gene Deal claims is true, we're not talking about a petty grudge or one man's failure to speak up. We're talking about someone standing right on the pressure point of one of the deadliest eras hip-hop has ever seen. Forces way bigger than Mase might have been calling the shots, deciding who lived, who died, and which way the story would be written. That makes him more than just a witness. It makes him a gatekeeper. And history shows us one thing about gatekeepers. They rarely open the door until there's nothing left to lose, which leaves us with a chilling thought. If those gates stay locked forever, does the truth about Biggie's last night die locked up with them? Too many times we've heard that some stories don't stay buried because no one knows them. They stay buried because too many people know them. And if Mase is holding even one missing piece, then every podcast, every interview, every quiet night he spends alone is really just a countdown clock. So here's where it lands. If these allegations are real, then Mase ain't just a bystander. He might be the key to unlocking one of the biggest mysteries in music history. But the question is, will the truth ever surface, or will it vanish with the ones guarding it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Mase has been holding the missing piece all these years, or is this just another layer of hip-hop's unsolved legend? Smash that like button, hit subscribe, share this with a friend, and I'll catch you on the next one.